On March 17, 1943, in Berlin, a folder crashed onto a mahogany table with such force that coffee splashed out of Admiral Wilhelm Kanaris's porcelain cup, staining intelligence reports, the discovery of which by the Gestapo would mean execution. Impossible, Kanaris thought. The Americans are feeding us propaganda through over-recruited agents. Through the tall windows of the Abwehr headquarters, Kanaris could see the Landwehr Canal, where Rosa Luxemburg's body had been dumped 24 years earlier. Now, as head of German military intelligence, he held in trembling hands a report that challenged not only Nazi propaganda, but also the entire mathematical basis of the German victory. According to intercepted messages and reports from agents still operating in Mexico City, the Ford Motor Company's Willow Run plant was producing one B-24 Liberator bomber every hour. The B-24 Liberator, consisting of 1.5 million individual parts, 450,000 rivets, and 30,000 individual components, was assembled into an 18-ton aircraft rolling off the assembly line faster than Germany could produce a simple Kübelwagen military vehicle. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, standing at attention in front of Kanaris's desk, double-checked the intelligence 3 times. The numbers remained the same. Neither man knew that this moment would trigger the most devastating intelligence failure in modern warfare: the systematic failure of German intelligence to comprehend, believe, or effectively communicate the true scale of American industrial potential to the Nazi leadership, dooming the Third Reich through a fatal miscalculation of mathematical inevitability. The collapse of German intelligence regarding American production began 2 years earlier. In 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Kohler presented Hermann Goering with reports from General Friedrich von Tischer's military attaché in Washington, which stated that American aircraft production was approaching 2,000 per month. Goering laughed, literally laughed, saying that Americans can only build refrigerators and razor blades, not military aircraft. The Americans are bluffing, Goering told Hitler in the Wolf's Lair in December 1941, 4 days after Pearl Harbor. Their democracy makes them weak. Their mixed population makes them ineffective. Their Jews make them corrupt. They can't produce what they claim to produce. By March 1943, German intelligence networks across America were reporting things that contradicted all assumptions of Nazi racial theory and economic understanding. The reports came from various sources: Mexican industrialists sympathetic to Germany, Spanish diplomats, Swedish businessmen traveling through Detroit, even intercepted letters from American workers to relatives in neutral countries. They all reported the same thing, the incredible thing. The Ford Willow Run plant alone produced more heavy bombers than all the aircraft factories in Germany combined. Oberstleutnant Nicholas Ritter, head of the Abwehr's aerial reconnaissance section, spent 3 weeks analyzing the data. A former Luftwaffe pilot who lived in America 10 years before the war, Ritter understood American industrial potential better than most German officers. His apartment in Manhattan in the 1920s overlooked the construction of the Chrysler Building. He watched as the Americans erected the tallest building in the world in less than 2 years. Admiral, Ritter reported to Kanaris, if these figures are correct, and I believe they are, then Germany has already lost the war. Now it's just a matter of math and time. The intelligence came in roundabout ways, each more dangerous than the last. Georg Nicholas, who ran the main Abwehr network in Mexico City, developed sources among American businessmen who moved freely between Detroit and the oil fields of Mexico. These people casually talked about the miracles they had witnessed, unaware that their table conversations were being transcribed by German agents. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison attended a reception at the German-Mexican Trade Association in Mexico City. After a few tequilas, Morrison began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run plant, organized by Ford to demonstrate to potential investors the company's ability to fulfill government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison said, unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was memorizing every word.
"What I saw is indescribable. The assembly line is over a mile long. The building is so huge that clouds form inside it, and sometimes it rains at the factory. They have 42,000 workers, including thousands of women, black women, building the most complex machine ever built." Morrison took out a pencil and began to draw on a napkin. "The bomber has 2 bomb bays, each holding 4,000 pounds of ammunition, 4 engines, each with a capacity of 1,200 horsepower. They produce them in sections, the so-called Ford subassemblies, which converge like rivers flowing into the sea. The wing sections come from one direction, the fuselages from the other, and the tail sections from the third. They meet at precise points along the line." "But surely such complexity means frequent breakdowns, delays in production?" asked Blau, trying to sound casually interested. Morrison laughed. "That's exactly what Consolidated Aircraft thought. They mocked Ford, saying you can't build airplanes like cars. But Ford broke the bomber into 60,000 separate operations. Each worker performs the same task over and over again. A woman who cooked breakfast for her children yesterday is installing hydraulic lines in the tail section today. They train them in days, not months." Perhaps the most detailed intelligence came through Francisco Franco's Spain. Colonel José Hungría, the Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained close relations with American aircraft manufacturers, secretly providing intelligence to Germany in exchange for supplies of tungsten, critical to Spanish industry. In March 1943, Hungría attended a reception at the Argentine embassy where he met with Charles Sorenson, Ford's chief of production and architect of Willow Run. Sorenson, believing that he was talking to a representative of a neutral nation that might buy planes after the war, spoke freely about the plant's capabilities. "Colonel," Sorenson said, not knowing that every word would be in Berlin in 2 weeks, "when I first visited the consolidated plant in San Diego in 1940, they built the B-24 outdoors, in the sun. Each one was different from the previous one, spending 180,000 man-hours on the aircraft. I knew we could do better."
Hungría demanded details, citing the professional interest of a military engineer. Sorenson, proud of his achievement, agreed. "I spent one night in a hotel room in San Diego sketching out the entire production flow. We will build bombers the way we build cars, not by allowing workers to crowd over a stationary plane, but by moving the plane past stationary workers. Each worker will perform certain tasks repeatedly, achieving perfection through repetition." The Spaniard asked about the problems with the workforce with such complexity. "We have built a training and production school that trains 8,000 workers every week," Sorenson replied. "Women make up 40% of our workforce. In fact, they are better at detailed work. They have fewer hands for hard-to-reach places and more patience for repetitive tasks. We have Negro workers operating complex equipment. We have 16-year-old boys who manage the logistics of supplies. Democracy, Colonel, means using all available human resources." Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish channels, German intelligence received consistent reports confirming the Willow Run's production rate. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited the plant in March 1943 and reported, "The plant operates with an efficiency that defies European understanding. They use 1,600 specialized machines, many designed for single operations. The capital investment is staggering, maybe $200 million for equipment alone." An encrypted message from Japanese Commander Toshikazu Oganimi in Tokyo, intercepted by German intelligence, provided independent confirmation. This single factory produces more aircraft per month than the entire Japanese aviation industry. By April 1943, German intelligence had collected comprehensive data from 17 independent sources confirming the production rate. The numbers were staggering. Willow Run alone produced 650 B-24 monthly at its peak, with total American B-24 production exceeding 1,400 monthly. Desperate to get reliable information, Kanaris authorized Operation Pastorius, a submarine-launched sabotage operation in the United States. George John Dash, the leader of one of the two four-man teams, lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders from Kanaris were to gather intelligence on aircraft production before conducting any sabotage operations. In the early morning of June 13, 1942, Dash's crew disembarked at Amagansett, Long Island, disembarking from U-202 just after midnight. A few days later, tormented by the consequences of his mission and what he already knew about the American potential, Dash surrendered to the FBI. During the interrogation, Dash told something that stunned his American captors. Kanaris himself told me that Berlin does not believe your production figures. They think Willow Run is propaganda. He wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, evidence that would force Goering to accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman asked incredulously, "They don't believe that we produce one bomber per hour?" Dash laughed bitterly. "Agent Landman, I used to live here. I've seen your car factories. I tried to tell them that if Ford could produce one car every minute before the war, they could certainly produce one bomber every hour during it. They accused me of being a defeatist." On April 20th, 1943, on Hitler's 54th birthday, Kanaris personally presented intelligence information to Goering at Marienhall, the Reichsmarshal's ostentatious hunting estate north of Berlin. The meeting became legendary among German intelligence officers because of Goering's complete rejection of reality. Kanaris brought photographs, intercepted documents, and reports from dozens of sources. He spread them out on Goering's massive oak table, like a dealer showing the cards that would lose the game. "Mr. Reichsmarschall," Kanaris began carefully, "we have confirmation from 17 independent sources. Ford's Willow Run plant produces one B-24 Liberator every hour at peak production. They have reached this pace consistently since January. Goering, who by this point in the war weighed over 127 kilograms, took one of the photographs, showing the assembly line stretching into the distance. "Kanaris," Goering said with contempt, "do you think I'm a fool? These are obviously wooden models, props for propaganda. The Americans want us to believe that they can build airplanes like sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces a maximum of 50 bombers per month." Kanaris pulled out another document, an intercepted Pennsylvania Railroad manifest showing aluminum shipments. "Mr. Reichsmarschall, they consume 16 million pounds of aluminum a month at this one plant. That's more than our entire monthly production." Goering laughed harshly. "Then where do they get this aluminum from? From their Negro workers? From your female riveters? Kanaris, you have been deceived by American propaganda." A week later, Kanaris was summoned to the Wolf's Lair for a personal report to Hitler. The meeting was attended by Generals Jodl and Keitel and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. Hitler, who was studying maps of the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht was preparing for Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, listened impatiently as Kanaris presented the intelligence. "My Führer," Kanaris said, knowing he was risking his life, "if the Americans produce 1,400 B-24 a month, plus the same number of B-17, plus their fighters, plus British production, the aerial bombing of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities." Hitler's response was characteristic. "Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass-producing simple goods, cars, refrigerators. But a bomber is not a car. It requires precision, skill, and dedication. While it took us 6 years to prepare for the war, they claim to have achieved it in 16 months. It's impossible." General Jodl studied Kanaris's figures and made a calculation. "Even if we take a quarter of these figures as accurate—" "The numbers are false," Hitler interrupted. "The Americans entered the war in December 1941. It is impossible to build this miracle factory and achieve such production in such a time." Unknown to the Nazi leadership, Kanaris obtained newsreel footage of a working Willow Run through American intelligence contacts in Switzerland. The film, sent through Spanish diplomatic mail, showed 5 minutes of the assembly line running at full speed. Kanaris and his deputy, Hans Oster, were watching a movie in a locked room at the Abwehr headquarters. The camera followed the entire mile-long assembly line. B-24s moved past at a steady pace at all stages of construction. Workers, men, women, black, white, performed tasks with mechanical precision. The clock, visible in several frames, confirmed the time. "Oh my God," Oster whispered. "It's true." Kanaris lit the film with his lighter, watching it burn. "We can't show it to them. They will accuse us of creating fake footage or of betrayal." In November 1943, German intelligence received aerial photographs of Willow Run taken by a Spanish diplomat. The photo analysts spent weeks studying the images. Their conclusions? There were about 12,000 cars in the parking lots, which indicated work in 3 shifts. Ready-made B-24s are visible at a nearby airfield, 47 aircraft ready for delivery. The assembly line is visible through the overhead lights. The planes are positioned exactly as reported. The railway tracks showed dozens of freight wagons delivering materials. Getman Vernard wrote, "Photographic evidence supports human intelligence. The production rate seems to be accurate. An immediate strategic reassessment is recommended."
Goering, who was shown the photographs, dismissed them as clever American photographic manipulation, probably using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments and the only Nazi leader with a genuine understanding of industrial production, secretly obtained American intelligence. His diary entry dated May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, reveals his despair. "If the figures of Willow Run are at least half accurate, we will not be defeated, but annihilation. They produce more planes in a month than we do in a year. But I can't tell that truth. To do that would be my death sentence." Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland and a graduate economist, analyzed American economic data. His report to Himmler in December 1943 was blunt. The pre-war production of the Ford Motor Company in 1941 was 1,100,000 cars. They transferred this capacity to the production of bombers. At the current rate, by June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24 alone to drop our entire tonnage of bombing of London 1,940 every day. On Christmas Eve, 1943, Kanaris received intelligence data showing American production forecasts for 1944. B-24 Liberator, 18,000. B-17 Flying Fortress, 12,000. B-29 Super Fortress, 1,000. Fighters, 40,000. The total number is 86,000 aircraft. Hitler's answer, when presented with these figures: "The Americans claim that we will produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations have produced in history. This is absurd." By February 1944, Kanaris was removed from office on suspicion of defeatism and treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was an NSDAP loyalist who would not dare to contradict Hitler or Goering. But reality couldn't be ignored forever. On February 20, 1944, during the Big Week, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, sending more than 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft factories. In 6 days, they dropped more bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe dropped on Britain in the entire Blitz. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland told Goering, "Mr. Reichsmarshal, I counted more than 800 bombers in one formation. These planes are real, and they drop real bombs." On the 6th of June 1944, more than 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over France. The Luftwaffe was able to assemble less than 300 fighters in response. Field Marshal Hugo Speer sent a desperate message to Berlin. "The enemy's air superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was right. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." By April 1944, Willow Run had reached its peak production rate.
That month, employees in 2 9-hour shifts, working 6 days a week, produced 453 aircraft in 468 hours, which corresponds to the production rate of one finished B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. The factory employed 42,331 workers, including 11,000 women, 26% of the workforce, 3,800 African Americans, 9% of the workforce, 1,200 workers with disabilities, 3% of the workforce. This demographic composition would completely destroy the Nazi racial ideology. Inferior races and weaker segments of the population outperformed the German upper race in terms of productivity by orders of magnitude.
After the war, surviving German intelligence officers revealed the full extent of the failure. Walter Schellenberg testified in Nuremberg, "We knew the truth about American manufacturing by the beginning of 1943. Every professional intelligence officer understood that the numbers were accurate, but telling this truth meant risking execution for defeatism." Hans Bernd Gisevis wrote in his memoirs, "The tragedy was not that we lacked intelligence about American production, we were drowning in them. The tragedy was that our leadership refused to believe it because it contradicted their racial ideology." The German intelligence officers who tried to tell the truth paid a heavy price. Admiral Wilhelm Kanaris and Hans Oster were executed on April 9, 1945, in the Flossenburg concentration camp. Alexis von Renne was executed in October 1944 for his involvement in the July 20th conspiracy. Hans Bernd Gisevis fled to Switzerland and survived the war. A review of the United States strategic bombing confirmed what German intelligence had reported. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24 between 1942 and 1945. Peak production was 650 aircraft per month. The hourly rate has been maintained for several months. The total cost of one plane dropped from $238,000 to $137,000. Albert Speer was asked during post-war interrogation why Germany did not believe intelligence reports about American production. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every hour was to accept that our whole worldview was wrong, that democracy is not weak but strong, that racial mixing does not create weakness but strength, that women can do men's jobs. That would mean accepting that we started a war that we could never win. Who would have said that to Hitler? Will Monroe, the real inspiration for the image of Rosie the Riveter, worked as a riveting pistol on the B-24 production line. She and thousands of other women had never worked in industry before Pearl Harbor. "We knew we were building something important," Monroe said in an interview in 1984. "Every rivet we hammered was supposed to help end the war. Sometimes we worked 2 shifts, sleeping in the parking lot between shifts. Our brothers, husbands, and grooms flew on these planes." The failure to believe the intelligence about Willow Run had disastrous consequences. Fighter production. Germany continued to produce bombers until the end of 1944. Resource allocation. Resources were spent on miracle weapons instead of practical defensive means. Strategic planning. Operations were planned based on opposing hundreds of bombers, not thousands. Diplomatic failures. Peace initiatives were postponed due to a lack of understanding of the imminent defeat. German economists analyzing the captured documents realized the true scale. Willow Run was worth $200 million. The investments of the entire German aviation industry from 1933 to 1945 are the equivalent of $400 million. Willow Run has an area of 3.5 million square feet, which is about the area of 75 large football fields. All German aircraft factories combined total 8 million square feet. Willow Run's electricity consumption is 2.5 million kilowatt-hours per month. The Americans have built one factory that consumes more resources than entire German cities. The final count by the end of the war revealed the full scale. A total of B-24, 18,188 were produced. Willow Run was built by
8,685. A total of B-17, 12,731, were produced. The total number of American aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945 is 324,717. The total number of German aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945 was 94,700. The United States produced 3.2 times as many aircraft as Germany, waging a war on two oceans.
Historians call the failure of German intelligence in relation to American production one of the most significant in military history. It was not a failure of the collection. German agents gathered accurate, detailed intelligence. It was a failure of acceptance. The leadership refused to believe the intelligence that contradicted their worldview. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg concluded, German intelligence accurately assessed the American production potential by the beginning of 1943. If this intelligence had been believed and taken action, Germany could have sought peace 2 years earlier, saving millions of lives. This story has deep lessons. Cognitive bias. Accurate intelligence can be rejected if it contradicts basic beliefs. Ideological blindness. Political ideology can prevail over mathematical reality. System failure. Intelligent systems that punish the objectionable truth get a convenient lie. Fatal miscalculation. Underestimating opponents leads to catastrophic mistakes. At the opening ceremony of the Yankee Aviation Museum at Willow Run in 1985, former Rosie the Riveter, Will Monroe, met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans Rudel. Rudel asked, "How did you build so many so quickly?" Monroe replied, "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing special. They were just celebrating, building bombers, celebrating. Democracy is not complicated. They're just free people doing their best." Rudel replied, "We were told that democracy makes you weak, that your diversity makes you ineffective. We've been told lies, and those lies have killed millions." In the ruins of Berlin, in May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered the final German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20th, 1945, Hitler's last birthday. Willow Run production has been confirmed. We reported this truth 2 years ago. They didn't believe us. Germany is not dying from a lack of intelligence, but from a lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicts what we want to be true. Let future generations learn that reality does not adapt to ideology. Mathematics is not inferior to mythology. The ignored truth becomes a tragedy. The report was never delivered. By that time, Hitler was in his bunker. The 1,000-year-old Reich was only days away, and thousands of American bombers, many of which were built at Willow Run, delivered the final argument that German intelligence had been trying to make 2 years ago. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was excellent. The adoption of German intelligence was disastrous. In this inability to believe an inconvenient truth lies a warning to all nations. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Those who deny reality in favor of ideology will eventually be destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than the bombers. He built a proof that democracy works, that diversity strengthens, and that freedom produces. The German spies have calculated everything. The German leaders did not believe anything. And this disbelief killed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb.